coordinator for member engagement coordinator for the Interagency Network for Education in Emergencies, or as we call it, INEE for short. It's a real pleasure to be with you today and to be part of this panel discussion that is talking about a real important topic on how networks can support people in times of conflict and crisis. So I want to explain a bit more about INEE and what we do. So INEE is a global and open network made up of 18,500 plus individual members from 190 countries. We have members from a variety of stakeholders, NGOs, UN agencies, governments, individuals who are just interested in education and emergencies, all the diversity that you can think of. And all of us are united by a shared mission and work to ensure the right to quality, relevant, and safe education in emergency and crisis contexts for all. So essentially, our work is all about supporting our members. So to answer the question why we need to collaborate and create networks to resolve conflicts and deal with crisis is really, I guess, going back to the need really that the importance, in fact, that networks play in bringing diverse actors and stakeholders together. I think essentially that's the thing that is an added value, and it helps to build good faith and better understanding, as well as fostering more cooperative and collaborative impact mindset, working towards a shared goal. So really it's that connection, the networking possibilities that networks provide, which is the key here. And it's really what helps people who are working in these crisis contexts. For us, education in emergencies is a very complex and ever-changing issue. And because of that, we know that only one entity can solve all these problems. So that's why we believe really that substantial progress can be made when there are different people involved, different perspectives, different experiences and backgrounds to achieve a common agenda towards creating collective impact. So that's really what guides the work of our network. As I mentioned, INEE is a global network, and we serve our members and others working in the field of education and emergencies. Though our core functions that we work through are community building, convening, knowledge management, amplifying and advocating, facilitating and learning, and also providing tools and resources. What I want to emphasize is that our work is not about implementing projects on the ground specifically, and nor do we provide funding, but really our work is more focused on connecting individuals with the resources and tools that will help their work to implement their projects or to do their own funding of projects. And so we are the ones that are providing those resources and the platform for them to speak out and raise their concerns. And one of the things that we're really proud about is that we raise the voices of those who are mostly marginalized or don't have those spaces to speak out or to really have their voices heard. So we hope that through the work that we do, the initiatives that we have, that we can support them to be heard more. And yeah, by their governments and by others who they can connect with and build partnerships, etc. Yeah, I don't know if I still have time, just a little bit. Yeah. Okay, I just want to also share a little bit more about a recent initiative that we launched. It's called the Community of Practice of INEE, and it's purely on a Slack-based platform, online platform. And it's a way that we've managed to get our members talking to each other, fostering this horizontal communication with them through synchronous and asynchronous exchanges, really to share knowledge, local wisdom, amplifying their voices, developing resources and capacity building, sharing information with us directly, but also amongst each other. And it has not had the, I guess, let's say it hasn't been as successful yet as we would like, because people are still facing some challenges with the Slack platform. It's not as popular as WhatsApp or other app or messaging tools, but our hope is that eventually we'll get to the stage where it'll really be used by our membership and they'll find great value. So that's just an example of an initiative we have, but of course I'm really looking forward to hearing from the other panelists and even participants who have other similar experiences.
Amazing.
Thanks.
Thank you so much, Natalie. Really appreciate you kicking us off with your stories and examples. And I really think it will be one of the themes that we will be discussing with other panelists as well, is this idea of very complex situations and the need to have networks that are diverse, where different voices are represented in order to tackle the complexity that it's not only education, but then exacerbated by the crises or the emergencies in which we are trying to provide, for example, in your case, the education. So thank you so much, Natalie, for that. I will maybe then to give Raphael a little bit more time. I know you have just joined us, and thank you so much. And I'm glad we were able to resolve the IT challenges. So thank you so much for joining, Raphael. Maybe I'll pass over to Annegret, and then we'll come back to you, Raphael. That's all right, just to give you a little bit of time to catch up. But Annegret, if you would be kind enough to go next, and yeah, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you, Jan, and also welcome from my side. I'm very happy to be invited to that meeting, to that panel. I would love to share a little bit what we are doing at MitOst, and also maybe some thoughts about that topic already. So a little bit about MitOst. We are an international organization sitting in Berlin, in Germany, but working, so we say our geography is Europe and its neighboring countries and regions, which goes also to the until China, North Africa, Turkey, but also in Europe itself. We are a network organization, but we are not only a network organization. So what we are trying to combining is being an international network with thousands of people and also organizations from the civil society sector in the countries we are working, to learn from each other, to strengthen each other, to be in a setting where like-minded people are together and support them as a network. I can speak about that a little bit later, how we do that exactly, but also at the same time working on the ground with our partners, and also seeing how this network can support and the work on the ground and make it better. MitOst and its daughter companies, we are also in our organizational structure in network, working on different topics. So that is culture and collaboration, so how cultural organizations can collaborate in a better way, and also in the broad field of active citizenship with citizenship education. That is also a very important point. We try to support people on the ground because we believe that impact and change is happening locally, it's happening on the ground, and that's why we are supporting this both in collaboration, things we're doing together, but also with funding. Maybe also to say a little bit about the history. MitOst was founded middle of the 90s, and that's also very connected to the topic we are having right now. One of the driving questions for us back then was also how in times of transformation, which was in Middle and Eastern Europe the case that time, where we don't know what the future will bring. We had a lot of hopes. We were eager to contribute to that, but there was nobody could tell us what you need to do in order to create that future. There was a huge uncertainty also on a state level, on an educational level, on all levels. What kind of skills people need, what kind of support people need in order to come into action, to become citizens. That is what democracy needs, right? Citizens, and be able to act in that uncertainty. I think that is a question coming very much back today's in today's situation, especially when we speak about crisis and emergency situation. What I would like to point out is the role of trust in networks and in also especially the times of crisis and emergency. And Jan, you need to help me to look at the time and interrupt me if I'm speaking too long. Because it's a storytelling session, I would like to share a little bit what we as MitOst responded to the war in Ukraine. You all know that 24th of February, Russia attacked Ukraine and started a full-scale war. And because we are having a lot of people, a lot of colleagues in Ukraine, we tried from the first day on to support. And that was very successful because we were a network, and trust is a main ingredient here. We started the next day calls both with the European part and with the international part. More than 100 people took part, and we discussed the question how we can support, what we can do. And we were immediately also in contact with our colleagues in Ukraine and I think that was also unique, from the first moment understood what are the needs in Ukraine, especially humanitarian needs from the first moment, but also what are the resources on the other side, and we're able to match them. And that sounds very obvious and very simple, but it isn't. And also now war is going on to bringing resources, and that's not as it's humanitarian help, but it's also military help, it's also other help together with the concrete needs. So we found ourselves in being a humanitarian aid supplier, which we are not from core. We started 3 days after the war donation campaign, which we never did before. I see that my time goes to an end. Thank you, Jan. That was only possible because of the network, and very essential role played trust here, because, and maybe that's the last sentence, my assumption is, and maybe that's also something we can discuss, that especially in times of crisis and emergency, when structures are not, or new structures need to appear in order to be able to act, and the old ways to do things are not working anymore, and you need to think about new ways of working. Trust is the texture that can bridge that moment when old structures are not working anymore and new structures are not there, or new ways to do things. And we can also, of course, speak how trust is built and how trust is maintained in network, where a network is all about relationships. And in the end of the day, relationships are about trust.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Annegret. You said it so beautifully, and I think you captured so much that what we have been also discussing throughout the entire festival. You know, I think trust and relationships have, you know, appeared when we had conversations about well-being and resilience and, you know, health and issues around that in networks, for example. And a lot of us throughout the festival talked about COVID as one of those things where, as you said, the systems were also not working, the structures were not, and we had to kind of create for new. So in a way, what's nice about our session today is that the kind of crisis has so many different facets, and we kind of are, you know, whether it is the COVID and the health, or if it's war and other formats, you know, it's still showing how networks are helpful and how there are certain key ingredients across those differences. So thank you so much, Annegret, and I look forward to discussing issues of trust and uncertainty. I think will be another thing that will keep coming up in the presentation. So thank you. Raphael, thank you so much for joining it again, and yeah, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Jan. And I'm very glad that I managed to join, because I think, yeah, as we are talking here on behalf of networks, I think the connectivity issues is also another challenge to mention. So maybe going through, I would have to share with you, I will just divide this into two parts. I will talk about myself and then move into where I am today as I represent the United Network of Young Peace Builders. So my name is Nkurunziza Raphael. I was born in Burundi. And when I was born, I think around in 1993, there was something bad that happened in the country. When the crisis started, the president at that time was killed, and I and my family, we fled in the camp of refugees in Tanzania, where we spent around 13 years. So when I came back to Burundi, I encountered the violence that happened in 2015. Well, mainly young people were the victims. So in that time, me and my colleagues, people that we have the same views on defending the cause of young people, tried to see how we can solve such issues, because young people were victims at that time. That's when we created the alleviate organization. When we find out that there are different gaps in order to solve the solutions. That's why we opted to look how we can join the international network, so that we can find young people, or other young people have the same issues, so that we can empower each other. So at that time, in 2016, we joined the United Network of Young Peacebuilders, and then in 2018, I successfully became the regional coordinator of the United Network of Young Peacebuilders. Maybe for those who do not know the network, this is a global network of young peacebuilders composed of around 125 different organizations, and among them, around 50 member organizations are based in Africa, and in my region, I coordinate around 20 member organizations. Just sharing some opportunities that the network provided. I think there are many opportunities around there, because as I was saying, the network helps to connect different young people who are working on the ground, because most of the time it's a challenge to be able to be heard when you are defending some causes as young people. So it's something that is very important once you join the global network, because the voice are amplified. And also the network allows us to have a weekly check-in on our members who are on the ground facing different challenges, so that we can raise their voice, defend their cause, and so that their voice can be heard. So also the network helps us maybe sharing different tools and different available opportunities, because on the ground, you find out that most of the time young people do not have different tools to use in order to develop themselves, or on the other hand, you find out that they do not have this enough capacities to face the different challenges that they are facing. So these are the things that we develop within the networks, and we share with our member organizations on the ground. These are the different opportunities that I can say that we share within the network. And on the other hand, I would say that there are different challenges that we face as we push for the recognition of the work that young people are doing. I would mention, for example, the challenge number one, which is the connectivity issue. Most of the time, I can mention that, for example, on the African continent, it's known that more than 17 young people are offline. So most of the time when we wanted to connect with people who are based in different localities, we find out that this challenge of connectivity is, it's a huge challenge that we have to face. Maybe it hindered the implementation of our work. Another huge challenge is that as we are defending the cause of young people, the challenge that young people are facing on the ground, not all stakeholders on the ground have a clear understanding of what we are defending. So you find out that sometimes our young people on the ground are facing different challenges when they interact with the different stakeholders who do not understand the different things that they are defending. So yeah, these are the different challenges, but we try to work together so that we can support each other. Yeah, maybe I think I still have time. I would like to just mention one of the example of the initiative that we are implementing within the network in my region. Yeah, because we identified that there are different challenges that young people are facing, and most of the time you find out that some of them are unknown. So yeah, in East and Southern Africa, I would say we are trying to collect evidence based on youth contributions to peace and security in Burundi, DRC, and Uganda. So most of the time, the data collected helped us to advocate for the issues that young people are facing on the ground. Yeah, we've been conducting this advocacy at different levels, from the African Union headquarters and at the regional level and at the national level. Yeah, that is it. I can say that my time is over. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Raphael. And we'll have time to unpack some of these together in discussion. And thank you so much for sharing your own story. You know, how you started to work on this agenda, and also very powerful to hear about the strength in numbers, especially for, you know, young people who are often excluded, having the community to collect the data, to explain what you do. I think that's really a lovely demonstration of what networks can do for you, or you can do with your networks in order to get that space. So thank you so much, Raphael. Look forward to discussing that further. And last but definitely not least, Arash, the floor is yours.
Thanks a lot, Jan. Hi, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here, and thanks a lot for inviting me. I mean, very interestingly that we are hearing about different type of network, formal, informal, local level. I think, you know, just the networks through partners, international organization. So I might be able to add a little bit in on some of the work that I think networks have done, some of the gaps that they feel. But let me start with a quick introduction. My name is Arash Bordbar. I work with the UNHCR, the UN Refugee Agency. I sit in the education section in headquarters in Copenhagen, Denmark. But my focus is mainly on tertiary education, which, because of that, it has allowed me to be connected to many students, refugee students and leaders globally, and also some of the networks that they are part of and they lead. From UNHCR, we strongly believe in the power of the peoples and collaboration that comes through network. We are supporting many networks, especially as we are really working towards engaging meaningfully with and involve the people that we work with and for, that are forcibly displaced youth. When you talk about resolving the conflicts or the networks work in crisis situation, I think for peace creation and for conflict resolution, we need a horizontal structure. The approaches that comes from the top may not necessarily work, and the bottom-up approach is how you can really start solving the challenges. We have supported creation of many networks, and I started myself through that as well. Student networks, community networks, which are working with us as UNHCR, but also advising us on the work we do, our planning, our policy, and strategies. These are so helpful in bringing the voices, opinions, but also the challenges that the community face from the local level, and they bring that all the way to the global level, so we can respond to the needs and conflict, but also so that we can prevent them. One of the very exciting networks that we worked with is called the Tertiary Refugee Student Networks. And this was created by students and scholars that have lived experience of refugees, have forced displacement experiences. And they aim to really connect all refugee students globally to bring them together, share information, connect, learn, and use their platform to really raise their voice and advocate, so to impact policies, and especially when it comes into emergency situation, to really bring up the challenges that it's sometimes lost with the communication when it comes into traditional responders. One of the interesting argument about networks we have seen was during COVID times. We have seen the potential of the networks in emergencies and conflict in a times where the movements of international organizations were restricted. And many of the aid organizations were having difficulties reaching out to the people. So networks were really most effective that helped a lot of the organizations and the countries to share information, share resources, and help out. And to simply put, they had less complicated communication streams, and the information could spread rapidly. And it really, working with networks has changed the way that we work with the affected population, and how we reach out sometimes also to the people that we don't usually reach out through partners and other organizations, especially if it is in a remote areas, wanting to share the resources, information, and help out. One of the main reasons I can say that many networks, whether informal or formal networks, are important for conflict prevention is that they imply shared values. The similarities of the members within the network's norm system increases over time. And through different forms of interaction among the members, the norms and the values of informal networks condition priorities that are worth fighting for. And the shared norms system will, in combination with the increased intra-regional trust and understanding, have a positive effect as a structural prevention mechanism, which really keeps the tension and dispute from escalating into violence. And I think some of the other speakers also talked about how this would really create a trust within different actors that are involved. So when an international organization comes in, or where an aid organization comes in, I think these networks would be able to easily create a trust within the community and the service provider to really smoothen the process and help to reach out to more people. And over time, I think they can also reduce the underlying problems that causes the dispute. They can strengthen the capacity of potentially conflictual parties to resolve these challenges peacefully, since prevention and cooperation become the norm as opposed to conflict. And maybe the last point I would say is that the informal networks have a potential role as a platform for more direct preventative measures through informal pressure and also informal diplomacy. They can create a common ground for some of the formal actions that we work with. So that's probably, I would start for now, and then we can have more conversation.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Arash, for your opening. And it's great to see the thread of some of the themes across the different stories, and especially you bringing in also the element of prevention and addressing some of the root causes rather than just responding to the crises once they emerge. And so we have now a few minutes, I think, to kind of respond to one another and what you've heard. I have a few questions, but before I go there, I just wonder whether any one of you would like to come and comment on anything you heard excuse me, from one another. Anything that might have resonated or you felt that you shared with some of the other speakers?
Maybe I just come in. Oh, I can see Annegret. Do you want to?
Please go ahead.
No, I just wanted to touch base on what you brought up, Annegret. I think in terms of the localized response, and that's I think what networks have done really great in terms of really creating that trust, creating that horizontal structure, and to be able to work at the same level with different actors, the community leaders, organization. That piece is really, really important when it comes into conflict resolution or emergency situation. I know it is sometimes quite difficult for them to have access, for them to have resources when it comes into informal networks on the ground, but that's also what we have seen to be much more effective when it comes into the time bounding emergencies, that you really need to get things quickly, you really need to share the information quickly. But that was a really interesting angle that you brought.
Natalie, and then Annegret, yeah, if you want to, go ahead.
I think Annegret was before me, so I'll go afterwards. I'm happy to do that.
Okay, maybe I also wanted to react on Arash, what you said, because this question of international networks versus local networks is also a question I'm holding quite a lot, because it's also very difficult as an international network to come into a community, to a concrete place, and to create that trust. Because also we're having that picture of it as an airplane, right? So these international networks are very important, but they are flying in the air and they are not grounded. It's very important to leave the earth from time to time, to reflect, to see what's going on. But then there is also a kind of disconnection can happen to what's going on the ground, and always to have that connection, to have that movement and that dynamic. I think that is really a challenge, because reaction on crisis and emergency is on the ground, needs to happen on the ground. And sometimes international networks also losing trust because they are flying around and are not enough connected to the ground. So that is also, I think that is a dilemma we are in and we are aware of, but also how to solve it and find the right balance here is still a question.
Yeah, I guess if I can come in, I'm resonating with what you all are saying, and I think what I'm gonna say is gonna just echo the same. As INEE, we have the same dilemma, like how can we approach closer to the people that we're serving, especially in crisis and conflict affected areas? Because we actually, as a network, we produce a lot of publications, resources, and tools that are very technical in language and very interesting, very useful, but we find that most people just don't absorb that, or they don't digest it that well, or it's just inaccessible. Maybe it's the language, maybe it's just too technical or whatever. So we need to find other ways to help them access it. And also the connectivity issues raised by Raphael as well, like not everyone has access to stable connections to download PDFs or to watch a webinar. So we need to find other ways of working. Again, COVID is also shining the spotlight on that much better now for all of us. That's something that we're grappling with day to day. One recent initiative that INEE recently started as well is something called an initiative called the Country Focal Points Initiative. And it's really a volunteer-based initiative where we select members who are active members of the network to represent us in the country. They do it on a voluntary part-time basis, and we pretty much build their capacity on what INEE works on and how they can support the engagement of members in the country, how they can build awareness about INEE. We give them presentations that they can share, talking points. We give them a lot of information to help them be able to communicate more about what we do. And we've been seeing some initial success with that project, this initiative, in localizing the work of INEE, because before it's just INEE, the global network, and it just looks like it's coming from the US global north, speaking down to this global south. But it's not contextualized enough, or people feel too distant who are not close enough to that, level of expertise or air space. So we're doing things to try and hopefully change that. That's one initiative. Yeah.
Thanks, Natalie. And maybe before I come to you, Annegret, just to maybe see whether Raphael, from your perspective, of course, you're regionally coordinating an element of a global network, and I would just love to hear kind of from your experience, how is that relationship with the global organization? Were there any things that allowed you to build trust with other regions and internationally, or that you have deployed as an organization? Oh, sorry, you're on mute.
Okay, thank you very much, John. From my side, I think there are different gaps that we face, especially in terms of trust and connecting young people with the international organizations. Especially most of the time, you find out that, as we were saying, young people, especially our youth-led organization, most of the time you find out that they are sometimes not registered, or they find different challenges when they wanted to register on the ground, and they are smaller organization on the other side. You find out that they are not bigger, and they find out that, for example, once we wanted to connect, once we wanted to support them in issues of fundraising or making them stable financially, you find out that there's some exigence from these international organizations that create the barrier of of connection. So for example, giving like a testimony of what I've seen. I've seen, for example, some youth-led organizations who joined the network. For example, when I coordinated the network from 2018, and they find out that most of the time they still commit their time and energies and the small resources they have to connect and contribute to the network. But you find out that we still struggle to give back, especially in terms of financial issues, because I would say that this is the main challenge that they have highlighted that they have. So it's a challenge that we keep struggling to see how we can support them in order to be I would say to register and to meet all of the criteria that different international organizations want. That's on one side, and on the other side we try to push through the international organization to maybe so that they can clearly understand the challenges that our members are facing. So we try to push on both sides to see how we can find a common ground. That is it. Thank you.
Thanks, Raphael. And I'll turn to Annegret just now. And in the meantime, for the audience members, please do feel free to use the chat now and put your thoughts and questions and reflections in there, and then we'll also take a few minutes to read what you share with us. But Annegret, over to you.
Thank you, Jan, and thank you also, Raphael, for pointing that out, to being also in this role of a network, also in this intermediate role, right? To transmit also this needs, this realities, the different perspectives. I find that very important, and maybe a little bit also provocative question to my colleagues here. I wonder if that is possible, just to work just on an international level and not also doing some things really on the ground together. That is what, as a model, we found, and we found it also important. And when it comes to trust, we always say that trust comes, so the simple definition is you're saying something and you're doing it. So this coherence, right? And that people can believe that you are reliable. And that's about care and appreciation and openness and things like this. But I strongly believe that trust comes also from doing things together and seeing that they work. And from that experience, especially in that field we are working in civil society, from creating impact together and seeing that together we can do things better than alone. That is what a network makes, right? I think you, Natalie, said it. So we can't do and solve the problems alone. We need to do that together. But there is in my understanding, also focus on doing. And with it doing comes the trust. And if it is only connection and delivering something, I wonder if that creates really that power of trust and the power that networks can unfold. Maybe a little bit provocative, but to also
Arash, do you want to take that up?
Sure. I mean, one of the main, I want to comment on something else, but let me comment on this first. One of the reasons that network have huge power because they're representative, and they bring unity in terms of the platform that they have. And that really is a great opportunity for advocacy. I mean, connection to media is one thing, but also connection to policymakers, connection to the people that are making the difference in each country. That's kind of, you know, where the importance come. And when it comes at the international level, if policymakers are aware that this network is representing their country, I mean, in terms of a big number of people, that would make a big difference. So that's, I feel like networks in many cases have great power in influencing an advocacy. But I wanted to comment in terms of the connection from the global level to the local level. What I have found useful is that in creating networks, the best way is to start from the local level. Mostly with the networks that we work here, that are global networks, but they first started as having members from each country or from each city, and then that would really slowly grow in connecting different countries together. And out of all those countries, you know, let's say they create a regional hub, and then selecting some of the focal point to be the regional focal points. And then all the regions come together, and then they select a couple of global leaders that would represent them. So creating structure from bottom-up approach has been quite helpful in creating the trust, so that it's not very hierarchical, but rather it's something that would ease the communication. And I also wanted to comment in terms of the connection challenges. What I have seen quite interesting is that especially again, this comes back to COVID, when there were a lot of information about safety, about how to get vaccinated, about all the COVID safety measures. There were a lot of videos, and the connectivity was a huge challenge to reach out, you know, to remote areas, and especially where there was no internet. What was useful is that each country had their own platforms, for example, WhatsApp and, you know, other platforms, and they would record it, which use much less data and much faster to kind of, you know, be downloaded. So that was one thing that they would be able to really get and record the video and kind of share it. So using the local platforms, or what is really popular or used the most, was also quite simple. And that's not something that, you know, bigger organization or traditional actors would be able to use. And that's how you try to tackle that. It's still, it's a big challenge, but I think I found that really quite interesting and useful.
Thanks, Arash. There's certainly so much innovation and creativity that came through, you know, the situation. You know, I think people's ingenuity just kind of flourished, and, you know, ties back to what Natalie was saying as well, is that, you know, like, you try to harness that and circulate that within the network and come through. So, and I see there are some comments. Thank you so much, Frank, for participating. And because we're in a smaller group, I would also, you know, open this up for our audience members who would like to speak, who, you know, don't prefer writing in the chat. If you would like to either pose a question to the panel or share your reflections, please feel free to put your hand up, and very happy to bring you into the conversation, in addition to posting in the chat if anyone would like. Okay, great. Well, at any point, people, please do feel free to raise hands and come in when you would like. I think one of the questions that I would like to kind of circle back to and maybe, you know, unpack a little bit further is issue of power differences and trust creation. I think we started to talk a little bit about the I think, you know, Natalie, you mentioned global north and south, and kind of, you know, like, you sit in your office and you don't get your hands dirty, that kind of power dynamics, you know, when you don't implement. And, you know, other issues, you know, of course, tying to having access to funding, you know, that would be another kind of issue. Like, who is the organization which kind of maybe spreads the funding across the network, etc. And so I wonder whether there are other kind of, I guess, elements that you have seen that kind of were maybe friction points within the kind of trust building exercise when we talk about power. How did you maybe overcome them, or when you've seen that they were kind of overcome in your specific situations? And you know, especially also thinking about the size. I'm, you know, not to put you, Arash, on the spot, but I'm also thinking about, you know, there is that kind of gravitas that comes with being an organization like UNHCR, and, you know, you could be fostering relationships and connections, but at the same time, you do bring certain power behind you, willingly or you know, or unintentionally, but you know, it does come. So I wonder if anyone would like to come to that. And Annegret, I see you. Yeah, please go ahead if you'd like.
If I may, thank you for that question, because that's very important, and it's I have the feeling it's very often underestimated, the question of power, especially when it comes to resources and access to funding and distribution of funding. What we face a lot, we are a very participatory and horizontal network, and our aim is to, for instance, when we are starting to collaborating, doing something together, that we are co-creating, co-designing, and taking decisions on an eye-to-eye level, so that every voice is heard. And we failed with that approach a lot. Not a lot, but we failed with that because we learned that, for instance, when we are starting something together in a particular area, we cannot take decisions together because we are coming from different perspectives, from having different insights. So it's not possible, even if you would like to do that. And we changed the approach. As our rule is right now that the local partner has a last saying. And they take the last decision, as even if you're discussing a lot and try to understand the issue, but there's a local partner always has the last word and the last decision, especially also in very difficult and dangerous and crisis situations. So I speak about countries like Egypt, also now in Ukraine. So what we can do there or no, also we cannot take that decision together because I'm not there. I'm also not taking the consequences, right? Because I'm sitting here in Berlin. As who's taking the consequences should have the final decision. And we reframed that approach a little bit from eye to eye to shoulder. So to say, we have that picture, we think we're standing together, but looking in the same direction, but we are not the same, and maybe not, as our eyes maybe are not on the same level, which is a pity. I would love to have it differently, but it is not the case. And I like this shoulder to shoulder picture also because it speaks also about solidarity, standing together, supporting each other, being together, but still embracing also the differences. And with differences also comes, different decisions, other forms of decision making, other forms of living with consequences, and all that kind of questions.
Thank you so much. It's a very tangible example of how you have learned and pivoted. So thank you so much for sharing that. And anyone else would like to come in?
I might just add to that, and I see also the question that Frank said. To put it in a simple way, especially when it comes into emergency or conflict, this, you know, at the global level, we've passed 100 million forcibly displaced people. So that's, I think, quite a huge number. And when we look at emergencies, we know that these are protracted situations. Right now, you know, from UNHCR, we have 16 emergency situations in 16 countries, 16 locations. So it's not a one-off, and unfortunately, it will not end tomorrow. To respond and to prepare and to engage better, I think we need to plan long-term. When we want the involvement of the community, when we want the involvement of young people, for them to be taken seriously, I think from the organizational perspective, and we believe that we need to invest in building the capacity, we need to invest in creating ways and platforms where they could engage in. Especially for young people, I think their meaningful participation is really important, so that they are not just participated one-off or being consulted. Or when we usually talk about, you know, giving them a voice, I think they do have a voice. It's more about passing the mic. So finding out how best you're enabling them, or you're creating an enabling environment where they could come in, they know the context, they have worked on what they want to say, and they are ready and they're resourced to really be able to participate meaningfully and to contribute. We've talked about this before, but usually when you talk to a different organization, then you're like, okay, here you go, you know, a young person or a community member comes in at a very high level platform, and because they do not know the context fully, it's very hard to engage. So I think investing in preparing the community and young people, and from our side, we started doing a lot of training. I mean, in my case, it's with the students that are leaders in their country, training on leadership, on advocacy, on public speaking, and different things, so that they are ready when an opportunity comes to engage and also to influence. So that's where I would leave it. And of course, dedicating budget, being serious on the recommendation. And when it comes into, we have a global document called the Global Compact on Refugees, and a lot of the refugee youth were involved. And because of their involvement now, in the final document, you have the word youth mentioned 16, 17 times. So you can see the impact, and now that is being supported by all the states. So these are, I think, structural ways that you can really have that impact.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Arash, for sharing that. And I'm afraid our time is coming to an end. I can't always believe how quickly the hour goes, especially with such insightful audience and speakers. So thank you so much for your time. And you know, the festival is coming to an end next week, but we're hoping that these are just kind of starting points to further conversations and further collaborations. And so you know, for our audience members and our panelists, we hope that we will, throughout the month of June and July, follow up with further conversations and kind of takeaways and collective action together out of these new relationships. Because I think successes like what you mentioned, Arash, but also what Raphael was mentioning in terms of their impact into how AU is, for example, looking into the security and peace agenda, and others deserve further celebrations and further conversations and amplifications as well. So as we close, I invite everyone to, as you have seen in the chat as well, to put any kind of takeaways that you are taking from this session, whether it is, you know, a small piece of action you can implement in your organization in the next 3 months or in your life. If you would like, also turn your cameras on, turn your mics on, and say goodbye to the panelists and to each other as we wrap up. So thank you so much, everyone. Really appreciate your time and input.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you so much. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. This is very amazing.
Thanks, Raphael.
Thank you.